Tonight's seminar is about smoker kingfish, which are big king mackerel, and big blackfin tunas, what we call studs. You know, the more I think about it, there's so much to talk about with these two species that I almost feel like we should have broken this up into two different seminars. But I'm going to try and pack as much information into one seminar, as I mentioned, about both species, because of course, this is the time of the year when we catch them both. Okay, right now, the fishing has been excellent, not every day. You're not going to go out there every day and sink the boat with fish. That's not the way it works. This is the year 2019. There's a tremendous amount of pressure out there. Anybody go out here on a flat calm Sunday or Saturday? Okay, we've talked about this before, how many boats are out there. You know, it's absolutely incredible. The pressure is just increasing. You know, I hate to say it, but our waters are degrading due to population and coastal development, so we face some huge challenges, we really do. But that doesn't mean that you still can't go out there and have an absolutely banner day. You can if you're prepared properly. Also understand that a lot of things that I'm going to mention to you are tactics and tips and tricks that work for us that we've learned over the years. I certainly don't claim to be an expert angler by any means, but I do claim to be an educated angler. My life revolves around fishing, between the magazine, between the show, between seminars and listening to everybody. You know, I live, breathe, sleep, dream, everything fishing. However, if something is working for you, and you're having really good success doing it, by all means, stick with it. Don't be a fool. If something works, keep doing it, right? And tell me about it so I can share it with everybody as well. You know, I'm a firm believer that there are no secrets. A lot of people say that to me. They say, hey, you know, we really like your seminars because you don't keep anything back. You don't hold anything back. Well, I don't own the ocean. Do any of you own the ocean? Okay, it's for all of us to enjoy. I don't own any of those fish. Plus, fish have something really special. It's called a tail. And they move. So what happened today doesn't mean it's going to happen tomorrow. Okay. Plus, you know, how often do you hear, oh, I went out there and I caught this and I caught that, and you know, and then you go to that same place or whatever, you know, and you don't catch that same thing. That's because those fish were already caught. Okay, so just because somebody hits the dock with a boatload of fish doesn't mean that they're going to be there, you know, again in that same place the next day. So it's a, you know, an unbelievable environment, a changing environment, and as far as I'm concerned, we all have an equal opportunity to this resource out here, okay? So we'll start with king mackerel. If you're just looking to catch kingfish, not quality, but quantity, there are many different tactics that you can use. Most effectively are trolling planers, for example. Everybody goes out, trolls planers with strip baits, and you can catch king mackerel until your arms fall off, especially this time of the year. But again, that's not what we're going to focus on. We're going to talk about how to find and fool the biggest king mackerel, the true smokers. Remember that kingfish are schooling fish. They're a coastal pelagic. What does that mean? A coastal pelagic means it swims out in open water, but close to the coast. It's not like a swordfish or a marlin that swims, you know, way out in the open and migrates great distances. Kingfish do migrate, and we'll talk about that in a second, but they're a coastal pelagic. They're always going to be within sight of land, and they're always going to be, and I say within sight of land, of course, on the Atlantic coast here. We're not talking about the Gulf of Mexico. That's a completely different fishery and a completely different world. Here, they're always going to be in anywhere from 50 to 250 feet of water. And if I had to narrow down that zone for these big king mackerel, probably going to be about 80 to 180 feet of water. However, there are going to be times when the largest king mackerel can be found in 20 to 50 feet of water. Anybody know when that is? Okay, when they're feeding on Spanish mackerel. King mackerel will feed on Spanish mackerel, especially the big king mackerel. Kingfish are schooling fish where you tend to find one, you will find multiple fish. It's a relatively fast-growing fish. However, the large ones, the smokers, and the definition of a smoker king mackerel is really any fish over 30 pounds. Okay? A 20-pound kingfish is a nice fish. There's nothing the matter with that. But a smoker, that's when you look in the water and you go, oh my God. Okay? When you go, holy, you know, grab the gaff, you know, the really, really big fish. Those big fish that are over 30 pounds are up to 20 years old. You know, a 50-pound fish is over 20 years old. That's not a dumb fish. They didn't get big by being dumb. Okay, they didn't. They're smart. They're hungry. They're voracious. They're predators, and they have to eat. There's no question. But they're not stupid. Okay, they're not dumb. They didn't get that big, you know, by making foolish mistakes. The smaller fish are much more aggressive. They really are. The bigger ones, on the other hand, are much smarter. And you know, has anybody ever hooked a big kingfish and lost it? How do you know that you lost a big? Okay. Bottom line is, a lot of them, we do pull the hooks on a lot of big kingfish. They have soft cartilage around their mouth. There's a lot of things that could go wrong even when you do hook a big king. So we want to make sure that, again, that we reduce that ratio and that we maximize on every opportunity, because you know what? You can go out here and go king mackerel fishing and hook 100 kingfish. And you know how many of them are going to be over 30 pounds? Maybe none. Okay, maybe none. You may get one shot, one. You may get one shot in your entire life at a anybody ever catch a 50-pound king mackerel? I'm going to tell you that in all of the years, you have the same guy who said who has fun when he doesn't catch anything, caught a 50-pounder, okay? In all of my years fishing out here, I have never caught one over 50 pounds. I've caught fish in the 40s, but I've never broken that 50-pound coveted mark on the king mackerel, okay? I may have hooked one. I certainly saw one. I can tell you one day, king mackerel fishing, kite fishing, hooked a nice fish, nothing major, 20 pounds, 22 pounds, whatever. Had him up next to the boat, had him on the gaff. I'm talking to the guy who reeled the fish in, and a giant king mackerel, I kid you not, no less than 60 pounds, came out of nowhere. One bite bit him in half. Took the whole bottom half. I literally, it happened so fast, I looked down at the fish, pulled up nothing but the head, the top half of the fish, and couldn't believe what I just saw. You know, and I thought about that for a second. Think about the power that that fish must have in its jaws to be able to come up to a 20-pound fish and in one bite, one snap, literally sever that fish in half. If that fish, that big smoker king mackerel, can sever a 20-pound kingfish and the spine, think about the spine inside, and follow me here, think about that spine inside a 20-pound kingfish. He severed it in one bite. He didn't chew it, okay? He snapped just like that, gone. And then I thought about my little thin wire leader. And I went, what? It literally left me speechless for a second, because now I really started to realize how strong these big king mackerel really are, right? And that's why you lose a lot of them. I don't care what you're fishing. There's guys that'll go out here and fish 80-pound single strand wire and still get cut off, okay? And the fish will still cut you off. Well, of course, because again, they have such strength in their mouth, these big fish, that you've really got to get lucky to land a 30, not a 30, but you know, a 40, 50, or even larger. There was just a king mackerel a couple months ago caught down off Fort Lauderdale, an absolute giant. Anybody hear about that fish? How big was it? 90 plus pounds. 90 plus pounds. That's, well, it's big, right? 90 plus pounds. So keep in mind, it was caught by a charter boat, not, you know, right close to shore. So that means that it could have been you, could have been any one of you, could have been you that likes to go out and catch nothing. You could have hooked that 90-pounder, right? So to think that on any day of the week, any bait you put in the water could result in the trophy fish of a lifetime, because that really is a trophy fish of a lifetime. That guy better have gotten that thing mounted, okay? So you've got to think about that. You've got to rig for fish like that and really be prepared for a true giant, because you may only get one shot in your entire life at a giant fish like that, or a giant king mackerel. So again, these are schooling fish. They migrate. During the winter, they head south, okay? And they go all the way down to the Keys, all the way down to Key West. During the spring, now, as water temperatures continue to climb and it's getting hotter and hotter, I mean, it almost feels like summer out there already, right? Okay, they're migrating north. These fish are all moving north. They're coming up the beach. They're going all the way up to the Carolinas. Now, again, in the fall, as temperatures begin to drop, they're going to turn around and they're going to head all the way back down south. So we have a spring run of kingfish and we have a fall run of kingfish. However, we're fortunate because can you catch a king mackerel 365 days a year? Absolutely. You can go out here any day of the year and catch kingfish. However, there are peak seasons, spring and fall, and again, right now we're dealing with that peak spring season when these fish are moving north. So where you caught fish today, or where someone caught king mackerel today, they may not be there tomorrow. That same body of fish is not going to be further south. They're going to be further north, okay? Because they're not making a U-turn and going back down. They're going further north. However, there's other fish that are continuing to flow up the beach, so to speak, to funnel up the beach. So just keep that in mind, what these fish are doing. They're always going to be on the edge in that shallower water, as I mentioned, 50 to 250 feet. They eat like crazy, so they're looking for food. They're looking for food, okay? They love to eat anything that's alive and silvery, including pilchards, ballyhoo, goggle eyes, blue runners, okay, threadfin herring, sardines. If it's alive and if it's shimmering and if it's moving, they'll eat it. However, the largest king mackerel, the true smokers, they like big food. They don't like, think about the amount of energy that a 40 to 50 pound kingfish has to exert to catch a little sardine this big. It's not worth it for them. It's not worth the energy for that fish to exert to eat a small bait. However, you put a 2-pound blue runner out there, and now that fish is going to commit. Okay, you put a big goggle eye out there, and that fish potentially will commit. So it's really important to remember that when you're targeting these large kingfish, the bigger the bait, the better. And do not be under the impression that the bait is too big. Anybody ever fish a king mackerel tournament down off Key West or anything like that? Down there in Key West, there's an annual tournament in the wintertime. These guys go out and they try and catch one giant fish, one big king mackerel. Before they do, they catch their blue runners, this big. Okay, these giant blue runners that put up a great battle. You'd be happy to catch the blue runner. You'd be like, that's a lot of fun, you know what I mean? They're sporty fish. They're catching those for bait. Okay, and they go out and they slow troll these giant blue runners because they're not looking for that 10-pound fish, that 20-pound fish that's not going to commit to such a large bait. They're looking for those giant fish. So the larger and healthier and more lively that bait is, the more likely you are to entice a larger king mackerel. Another thing to remember is kingfish are kind of sort of like a pack of lions. Who eats first in that pack of lions? Doesn't the male, the alpha male, the big guy, he eats first before all of the other ones eat. That's important to remember because in every pack of king mackerel, there's that alpha male. There's that one giant smoker, that 30 to 50 pound fish, and he eats first. And that is why when we have these local tournaments here, and there's 100+ boats, and they're all lined up for the Bimini start, okay, where they go 3, 2, 1, go, and everybody goes. It used to be where 3, 2, 1, go, and everybody went. And the guy with the 30-mile-an-hour boat, he was fast. And then it went to the guy with the 50-mile-an-hour boat was beating everybody. Now, if you're not doing 70+ miles an hour, you're in the back of the pack. Okay, you literally are in the back of the pack. And now that Bimini start is like a drag race. They just had a local tournament. I was watching a video from 2 guys. We were over in the Bahamas fishing. We weren't fishing the tournament. Well, when I came back, I was watching the video. One guy was doing 78 and one guy was doing 77. And they were side by side flying up the beach. That's really fast, isn't it, for a boat? You know why they go that fast? Because they know that the first guy who puts his baits in the water where that big alpha male kingfish is going to be likely to catch that fish because that fish gets to eat first before all of the other ones. So speed is deadly. Speed is important. That's why these guys that are really, really serious about these king mackerel tournaments have such fast boats. Other than maybe they're showing off a little bit, I don't know. But nevertheless, they realize that the first guy there stands the greatest chance. And if you're the 92nd boat there, do you stand a chance? Okay, no, you don't. I mean, even a squirrel finds a nut every now and then, a blind squirrel, okay, but no. And remember that, I should say this too. I don't care who you are. I don't care what kind of boat you have. I don't care how many engines are on the back of it. It used to be where 2 engines was cool. Then it was 3, 4, 5. Okay, now I just saw a boat down at the boat show that had 6 outboards. Okay, 6. And I'm just speechless when I see 6 outboards on the back of a boat. But nevertheless, you know, speed, you know, like I said, is super important. But I don't care who you are with what kind of boat, what kind of tackle. So many tournaments are won by the guy who goes right out front. He's got a little rinky-dink boat, so to speak. He's a weekend warrior. He puts 2 baits in the water. He's got a stinky sardine on a 3-hook sardine rig that none of the tournament guys, none of us would ever fish, ever. And he comes back and wins. You know, he's got a 55-pound kingfish or something and wins that division. So it can happen. There's no question. So regardless of what tackle you have, certainly you stand a chance. But consistency-wise, do you really stand a chance against the guy with a 39 CV who goes out and flies 2 or 3 kites with 3 baits off of each kite and then another 6 baits on the flatline side with 8 guys on their team all fishing like a well-oiled machine? You know, it's hard to compete with that. And that's why in a lot of these tournaments you often see the top 20 boats are the same guys. Okay, they're those same teams that have been fishing together for so long, and because again, they're covering so much of the water column. And we'll talk more about tournament fishing in a minute. So we know that these fish, like I said, are moving north. So you come out the inlet, you know that in order to catch these big king mackerel, this is not an artificial lure game. Okay? Catching big kingfish has nothing to do with trolling lures. It has everything to do with fishing live bait. That's the only way you're going to entice these big fish on a consistent basis. It's not about trolling lures. Doesn't mean that occasionally a big kingfish doesn't eat a deep diving plug or doesn't eat a strip bait off a planer. Of course, you know, you see these charter boats out of Pompano and Boca, and every now and then they're standing on the dock, or you'll see a picture with a guy holding a big king mackerel. These guys are doing 2 trips a day every single day. You go out and do 2 trips a day every single day and see what you catch. Okay, of course, eventually you're going to run across a big fish, but consistently wise, you know, for the recreational angler who just gets to go out on a Saturday because we work for a living, you know, on land, or whenever it is that you get to go out, okay, you've got to really increase your odds for these big fish, and it's not about trolling lures, it's about live bait. So if you don't have a live well on your boat, you should probably leave and come back for the second part of the seminar. Okay, actually, don't come back for that either, because that's even more about live bait. Okay, so make sure that you have a live well that really circulates a lot of water, because again, we're not talking about fishing pilchards. We're talking about fishing large live baits, and in our area, that means one of 2 things: goggle eyes or blue runners. Okay. Goggle eyes, obviously, you can go out and catch yourself. This seminar is not about bait fishing, but certainly you can catch them yourself. Okay, blue runners, you can catch yourself as well, much easier than catching goggle eyes. Plus blue runners you can catch all day long. Gogs is mostly a nighttime fishery. If you're not sure where to catch blue runners and you want to know, just go straight out Hillsborough Inlet to the buoy, put a chum bag in the water and a sabiki rig with little pieces of squid on the hooks, and you'll catch blue runners. And if that doesn't work, troll up and down the beach with little #1 planers with a small Clark spoon, and you'll catch blue runners. Okay, so they're not a tough bait to catch, and they're very, very hardy and very, very lively, and they make an excellent bait for large king mackerel. But remember, you need a really good live well to keep these baits alive, because if your bait dies, it's useless. Okay, you can't fish a dead blue runner. Okay, so there are 2 real options for catching these big king mackerel. One of them is slow trolling, and one of them is kite fishing. And both are really effective. When do you do each? And let's talk about each in detail. Well, I know that this time of the year, you know, now that it's almost June and July and certainly August, there are plenty of days where in the morning, how much wind is there? 0. Where you leave that inlet and it's slick calm. And you know, on one hand, we love that because it's slick calm. And who doesn't like it when it's slick calm, right? It's beautiful. It makes a great boat ride. It's beautiful out there. But even with helium, you can't even get your kites up. Okay, you struggle to get the kites to fly. And there's no way you're going to get that kite to fly dangling 3 goggle eyes off that kite. Okay, at best, you may be able to dangle 1 small pilchard. So There are times like that when the conditions don't allow you to kite fish, where slow trolling is the best option, okay? What does slow trolling mean? Slow, okay? Our goal is to get that bait fish to move through the water in a natural fashion at approximately 2 to 3 knots. That's it. It's not like trolling lures where you're pulling them at 7 to 10 knots. Slow trolling live baits is slow. And if you have a multi-engine boat, for example, on my boat, I've got a 39 CV with triple 350 Verados. There are times where I'll shut down the center engine because putting all 3 in gear is still going too fast, especially if you have what? Current. Thank you. So if you're going up the beach or down the beach and the current is pushing you, that's already pushing you at 2 to 3 knots. I thought I heard somebody, maybe I was mistaken, but I thought I overheard somebody say they were recently out, they were in 200 and some foot of water, and there was 5 knots of current, right? Was that you guys? Okay, 280 feet, 5 knots of current. So you could be sitting still, shut your engines down, and your boat's moving at 5 miles an hour. All right, think about that for a second. You've got to take the current into consideration. There's even guys that when they're trying to slow down will take a 5-gallon bucket, tie it to the back of their boat on a 20, 30-foot rope and throw it off the back of the boat and drag that just to slow the boat down enough. Because if you slow troll these live baits too fast, what happens to the bait? It dies. And next thing you know, you've got a goggle eye or a blue runner that's doing this. Okay, in the water, big circles like this. And you don't know it because you're in the boat looking at your rod tip. And that rod tip is tight because that line is going down to a downrigger ball, okay? And you don't know that that bait's going like this, creating a giant twist, and you're like, man, I'm not getting any bites, this sucks. You know why you're not getting any bites? Because your bait's dead and it's spinning, you know, like a cartwheel. So you can't go too fast, and really you can't go too slow. You want that bait to just move naturally through the water column. Our spread when we're slow trolling consists of either 5 or 6 baits. 2 downriggers, and downriggers are essential. If you're serious about catching big king mackerel, you've got to have downriggers. There are certainly other ways to get baits down deep in the water column, including trolling leads, including planers. Okay, however, a large blue runner, a 2-pound blue runner, or a big, strong, healthy goggle eye is going to trip the planer. Okay, and you guys know what I mean about planers, obviously. It's going to trip the planer all day long. So really the most effective technique are downriggers. So we fished 2 different downriggers. I have fished both the electric cannon downriggers that everybody's familiar with, where you push the button and it goes whee, and it winds up the ball automatically. And we also fished the manual, you know, Trollmaster downriggers, which I find to be equally as effective and much more affordable and easy to use. So it's not a real expensive gig to outfit your boat with 2 manual downriggers. 8 to 10-pound balls. You're going to fish one of the baits, one of the live baits, anywhere from 20 to 40 feet below the surface, and you're going to fish your second live bait 40 to 60 feet below the surface. So they're staggered. Okay? You don't want them at the same level in the water column. You want them staggered. Less tangles, okay? However, if a pattern develops and you get 5 bites and they're all on this one, what are you going to do with this one? Right? Okay, it's not rocket science. However, to cover most of the water column or a lot of the water column, you want them staggered. Make sure that when you feed that bait out behind the boat that it's at least 100 feet out before you clip that line to your downrigger ball. Some people make the mistake of putting a live bait in the water and they clip it to their downrigger ball 20 feet away. Okay, that's not the proper way to present a large live bait off your downrigger. A nice long lead, 100 feet, gives that bait plenty of room to swim around and to appear as natural as possible. And that's what you want because, again, these big kingfish are not dumb. Okay, they're not. The bait's got to look right, smell right, move right. Everything's got to be right in order for that big kingfish to commit. So we've got our 2 deep baits. Then we have 2 more baits off our outriggers, the tip of the outriggers, and 1 more way down the middle. And by doing that, you can easily fish 5. You could even fish a 6th closer to the boat if you want, but 5 is plenty. You've got 5 live baits out there, and you are slow trolling in an area where you believe that 30 to 50 pound kingfish is going to be. Well, how do I know where that is? There's so much water out there. You can't just stop anywhere. I mean, you can stop wherever you'd like. But the chances, of course, of finding those fish increase dramatically if you find bait. Bait. That's the key, is bait. Kingfish are always on the move. Okay, they're always on the move. They're not like a snapper or grouper that just sit there and go, well, let me wait for something to come by and then I'm going to go ahead and eat it. Okay, that's not what they do. Okay, they're on the hunt. They're always on the move. So if you find a bait, you're likely going to find kingfish. How do we find bait? Well, of course, there's a number of ways. One, we pay very close attention to our sonar, to our fish finder, right? And we constantly monitor what's going on below the boat. What's the next best, and probably even better than that? What are we looking for? Birds. Birds. Birds are the best fish finders in the entire world. Okay, they're far better than we are. When you see birds working, stop the boat, start fishing. Okay, because there are fish there. Okay, there are kingfish that are corralling bait. There could be other types of fish, but certainly king mackerel that are corralling bait, pushing bait up toward the surface. So birds are an absolutely vital indicator of action going on below. Also, frigates. Now, of course, a frigate is a bird. We all associate frigates with what? Dolphin. Stop associating frigates with dolphin. Frigates love dolphin, way offshore. But how many times have you seen a frigate right on the edge here in 100 feet of water and you're like, oh, I'm going to catch a dolphin? No, you're not. Okay? And you never see a dolphin, right? And you're like, well, there's a frigate. I'm going to catch a dolphin. Well, how do you know that frigate's not following kingfish down there? You know, how do you know he's not following, just as an example, yellowfin tuna? Okay? You have no idea what he's on top of. Frigates are not, they certainly follow dolphin, but they absolutely follow other game fish as well because they're waiting for those game fish to push bait up toward the surface. A frigate cannot get its wings wet, okay? Never. Can't get his wings wet. He's not covered in oil like a lot of the other seabirds that can get their wings wet. So he's forced to wait for bait to come pushed up to the surface where he can then fly down and capture that bait that's being pushed up toward the surface. And a lot of times that's king mackerel that's pushing that bait up. So not only pelicans, not only gulls and all other types of birds, but frigates, especially in that shallower water, are a great indication that there could be king mackerel there. Watercolor. What are we looking for when we're looking for big kingfish? What kind of watercolor are we looking for? Green. That's right, green. You know, we call it like pea soup green, or we call it kingfish green. Kingfish are one of the only species where we like the water to be dirty. Okay, we like that water to be dirty because they're savage hunters, and when that water's dirty, okay, first of all, understand that when you see that green water in 150 feet of water, that green does not go all the way to the bottom. That's just up on the surface. It may start to clear up 8 feet below the surface, but that surface green, that greenish tone, is a great indication that that's good kingfish water because it's easier for them to hide and to catch bait in that water, in that dirty water. And we call it dirty, but it's not necessarily dirty. It's just a different tone or a different color of water. But kingfish love that green water. So don't be deterred by that. Doesn't mean that you're not going to catch them in that cobalt blue, beautiful, clean water, because you will also. But don't be afraid to fish that green water. Structure. Wrecks, reefs, ledges, okay? Kingfish are not associated to structure, but the bait that kingfish eat are associated to structure. Goggle eyes, blue runners, any sort of live bait, smaller jacks, okay, even Spanish mackerel, as I mentioned, that swim right along the edge of the reef lines, all associate to structure. So we have a lot of that. We have a lot of artificial wrecks. We have a lot of natural reef formations. So the key is combining those elements. If you can find structure in 100 to 150 foot of water, and that watercolor has a little bit of a green tone, and there's birds working, is that a good indication that you should try fishing there? Absolutely. Okay, and that's the key, is finding multiple signs, because there's lots of wrecks. You can't just stop on a wreck. There's lots of reef. There might be lots of birds, but no structure. You know, there's so many different things that we see. So it's always a great idea to find a combination of those different elements, especially if you're reading fish. And you may not read kingfish. You know what? On my Furuno machine, I can easily tell when I see a kingfish on the machine versus any other type of fish because it's a squiggly line, okay? A horizontal line. That's what kingfish look like. Not like tunas. Tunas are a little square on my machine. The kingfish are little squiggly lines. I don't know about your equipment. Sometimes you'll see that. Sometimes you won't, but you'll see the stacked little squares, which is the little bullet bonitas and the little bullet blackfin tuna. And will king mackerel eat little bullet bonitas and blackfin? You're damn right they will. They love that stuff. Okay, absolutely love those little bonitas and those little tunas. That's a hearty meal for that fish. So if I see the bait, if I see the birds, the watercolor's right, I'm in the right depth, I'm going to fish there. If there's wind, enough breeze where we can kite fish, great, we're going to do it because we want to drift across that whole area. We want to cover ground. However, if there's no wind at all and you stop the boat and the boat's just spinning in a circle, so to speak, there's absolutely no breeze whatsoever, then we'll slow troll. So don't be afraid or, to be prepared for both. And really, you have to be prepared for both. On the kite fishing side of things, if we're going to kite fish, the way we rig is relatively simple. We fish a 7-foot rod rated for 15 to 30 pound line. Marshall pays me to say this. If you don't fish chaos rods, you will catch nothing. Okay? Daiwa size 50 wide reel, okay, loaded with 20-pound high-vis line. All my kite reels have high-vis line. It just makes it much easier to track those lines going up to the kite and down into the water. Much easier, especially when you're fishing 2 kites with 3 baits off each. You've got a lot going on in the spread, a lot. So it's key to be able to see that line. It's diamond monofilament, diamond line, high-vis, 20-pound. There's 500 yards of line on this reel, and that's important because when you're kite fishing, even when you're slow trolling, you hook a 50-pound king mackerel, that fish is going to dump half the spool on its first run. Okay, it's going to literally dump 200 plus yards. He's just going to take off, hence the name smoker. Okay, it's not because they're only good to eat when you smoke them. Okay, I mean, there's other good ways to eat. Well, 50-pounder probably shouldn't eat, but anyhow, high vis line, really, really important. From there, we've got a little ceramic ring. This is what clips into our kite clip. Never put your mono directly in the kite clip. Anybody ever make that mistake? I certainly have. Okay, and then your line gets twisted up in the clip. You get bit on the kite bait. Your line gets stuck, doesn't pop out of the clip. You've got a fish screaming line that way, and you've got your kite coming right down into the water. And you're, screaming and freaking out, and it's just a big mess. So make sure you have a little ceramic ring. And again, this is what clips into your kite clip. And remember, it's all about the details. Make sure that your kite clip is adjusted properly, especially if you're fishing a large, big bait like a big blue runner or a big hardy goggle eye. If your kite clip is too loose, what's going to keep happening? It's going to keep popping open, right? And if that's your long bait and you're fishing 3 baits, you've got to reel it all in and start all over again. So again, pay attention to the details because it all makes a difference. From there, just a typical float. Underneath the float is a little bead. Okay, we keep that bead there because there's times when we may need to add some lead to keep that line vertical in the water, and we don't want the little egg sinker bouncing on the knot right on the swivel. So we put the little bead there. So when we add a little egg sinker, it goes above the bead so it doesn't damage the knot. You may think it's something small, and it is something small, but combine enough small things together, and what do you get? A lost fish. Okay, you really do. So pay attention to the... I love this lady. Pay attention to the details. From there, little snap, okay, small, 12 feet, 40-pound diamond presentation fluorocarbon. Okay, 12 feet right there. You don't want that leader to be too small because you won't be able to see the float over the horizon. From there, at the end of the leader, we've got the most important part of the whole rig. You know what? Could you do me a favor and hold that for me? Try not to poke my eye out, please. Okay. We've got our stinger rig. Now, this is probably one of the, I don't want to say controversial, but one of the biggest confusing parts of king mackerel fishing is, number one, how long do I make this wire leader? That's number one. And number two, do I fish titanium wire versus single strand wire? And we're going to talk about the benefits of both and the length. As you can see, for starters, this is about 18 to 20 inches, the top part of the titanium leader, and it goes to a 5/0 live bait hook, and from there is about 6 to 8 inches of additional wire to a number one VMC 6X treble. Okay? It is very common to hook these kingfish just on that treble, just on the stinger. If you have a 1X hook, 1X means a standard strength hook, not a heavy duty hook. What could potentially happen to that hook? Straighten it right out, okay, or you'll pull it out of the fish. So it's very important that that treble be strong. Okay, so we fish a small treble, but it's a strong treble. That's not going to bend. I can catch a 50-pound kingfish or a sailfish or whatever it is on this one little tiny hook on that treble, and it's not going to bend. Okay, it's a super strong hook. I choose to fish titanium. In particular is Caliber titanium. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this brand. There are some other brands on the market. I have found Caliber titanium to be not only the most affordable, but equally as strong, if not as good as any other titanium I've ever fished. You can buy this stuff on eBay. That's really the only place that I've seen it. It's relatively new to the market, but you'll see it in more places in the future. 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 80 pound, comes in a variety of different strengths. Caliber titanium, good stuff. What are the benefits of titanium? Number one, it's flexible. Look at that, okay? Literally flexible. You're not doing that with single strand wire, okay? You're not. You can catch multiple fish on the same rig. When you catch a big king mackerel on single strand wire, what happens to that rig? It looks like this, okay? It's completely cafungled, totally bent, twisted. Half the time it's just absolutely shot and you cannot use it again. Okay, so the titanium being flexible offers a lot of advantages. Number one, being able to reuse the rig. Number two, the more flexible this is, the more lively and natural my bait looks, right? Because it's not being restricted by stiff wire. Number three, it's thinner than single strand. So this 40 pound is thinner than if you were to fish 40 pound single strand. However, there are some downsides. Anybody know what those are? Cost, for starters. Titanium is much more expensive than single strand wire, okay? But you've got to weigh out the benefits. You've got a $400,000 boat, you're fishing a $1,200 outfit. Is $2 make a big difference to you? I don't know, maybe it does. But again, if you really want to stack the odds in your favor, titanium is the way to go. It's much harder to work with than single strand wire. Single strand wire is very easy to tie a haywire twist. You know, you literally can put a rig together in seconds and it's done. It's very, very simple to work with, very easy to work with, it's very forgiving. Titanium, on the other hand, requires some skill and requires some special tools, okay, and patience. It really requires patience. To put a rig together like this is probably a 10 to 15 minute project. So you don't want to do it out on the water. Why is it a 10 to 15 minute project? Because while you can tie knots, as you can see right on the back of the package, it shows you what knots you can tie with titanium. Those knots, in my opinion, are large and sloppy. They look ugly, okay, and they're big, and I just don't trust them, okay? I really don't. So I use tiny little crimps on all of my connections with titanium. Tiny little crimps. I keep that rig as streamlined and as clean as possible. I want it to be as stealthy as possible, but I also want it to be as strong as possible. So this bottom hook is crimped on, obviously crimped to the eye of the J hook. From there, another crimp up to the leader, and then the swivel is crimped. And by the way, today's tackle is smaller and stronger than it's ever been before. So when we used to have to use big bulky barrel swivels, I don't know if you can really even see that, but that's an 80-pound swivel. an 80-pound test micro swivel. Super, super small, super stealthy, but it's super strong. I'm not going to put 80 pounds of pressure. My weakest link of this rig is not that tiny swivel. Okay, so don't overdo it. Look at your tackle. Look at what you're buying. Okay, look at what you're using and make sure it's all balanced. We use these tiny little crimps. They're little #1 crimps from American Fishing Wire. Okay, tiny, tiny little crimps that are so small that you can't crimp them with any tool. I guarantee you that they sell anywhere in this tackle shop or in any tackle shop. Does not have a tool with a crimp that tiny. So you go over to Michael's Arts and Crafts, okay? And you know how people crimp the little beads for jewelry? You buy a tiny little bead crimper. Really small, costs you 16 bucks. By the way, they're having a 40% off sale. So it's $10. And this is what you use to crimp those little tiny crimps. However, you can only apply so much pressure, because if I squeeze this too hard, this was not made for offshore saltwater angling grade. That's not what this is. This is for Betsy, sitting at home, who's putting together little necklaces with plastic beads. Okay? You squeeze too hard, it'll break right in your hand. So you really have to get the feel for it, and it takes a lot of time and finesse. But if you do it right, that's what you're left with, is a really stealthy killer rig that provides your bait maximum mobility. And keep in mind, if you're fishing really, really large baits, certainly this rig could be adjusted. In other words, this stinger can be longer. This 5-0 hook could be a 7-0 hook if you're fishing a giant bait like a big, a 2-pound blue runner. So, and not that you're going to dangle a 2-pound blue runner from your kite. Keep that in mind. But again, it can be adjusted. And obviously at the end of the seminar, you certainly can come up here and take a close look at this. This is our standard, thank you very much for all your help. This is our standard kite rig when we are specifically targeting large kingfish. Okay? Now keep in mind, on the flatline side of the boat, the opposite side of the boat, we're also fishing additional baits, up to 6. Staggered through the water column. There are 3 baits that are up on the surface with no weight, and then there are additional baits below the surface staggered in the water column. Typically the exact same rig. There's no difference except for obviously there's no float, there's no swivel, there's no bead, there's no ceramic ring. But you still have that long fluorocarbon leader because you don't want them to see that high-vis line, okay, and you're still fishing the same rig. Now, if you're slow trolling, very similar, except for here you can see the rig is a little bit different. Triple threat, that's what we call that. There are 3 treble hooks. See that right there? 3 treble hooks. This time it's your turn. Okay. 3 treble hooks right there. Okay, and this is for a large bait, like a 2-pound blue runner that's about that big. So you're going to hook them in the nose, top of the back in the center, and then closer to the tail. Kingfish are notorious, big kingfish. You know what they do to a bait? Anybody ever get a bait chopped in half? Right? We all have. We've all had baits chopped in half. That's because kingfish, they know that if they cut off the propulsion, okay, the tail of a bait fish, what happens to that bait fish? It's dead meat. It can't go anywhere, it can't swim anywhere. So they've cut off its propulsion. So they come up and they sever the bait right in half. They cut it right in half. And then they turn back around and they eat the remaining half. That's what they do. They're notorious for doing that. Okay, so by fishing a longer rig like this with these stealthy but super strong trebles, you've got a great chance of hooking that fish, even if it's just on this trailing treble. There are even guys that fish ribbon fish, which is a long, silvery, eel-like thing that swims like this, okay? And sometimes they'll have 4 of the trebles, so it'll extend another one, okay? So they have hooks throughout the entire length. The rig, or I should say the rod, thank you very much for your help, the rod is the same. It's that same Chaos KC 15 to 30. It's a composite rod matched to the same reel, high-vis line again, except for I've got 50 feet of 20-pound clear on here because, again, I want to be as stealthy as I possibly can be. My wire trace, one more time for me, my wire trace is a little bit longer, up to 24 inches on this one. Why? because when you are slow trolling a live bait, and picture this for a second, that live bait swimming through the water like this, okay? And here's this 40-pound king mackerel, and he's gonna charge that bait from the back because he's gonna bite it right in half. When he charges that bait, he's pushing all the way up on the line. If this was shorter, he would cut it right there. He would cut the mono. And you're still gonna have scenarios where that fish will push that bait with so much power all the way up that when he snaps his jaw, he'll still cut it. Okay? I don't care how long you make it. Some guys will fish these 4 feet long, okay, and they still get cut off. So to me, that's overkill. That's excess, you know, fishing a 4-foot wire leader. So, but again, keep that in mind that on the slow trolling ones, we do fish it a little bit longer right there, but it's rigged exactly the same way. And I'm also, you know, before I forget, I want to mention one more thing about this titanium with the crimps. If you go, if you can kind of picture this, if you go take the end of the titanium leader and you go in the eye of a hook or in the eye of a swivel, like you would when you're crimping monofilament as an example, and then you bring that tag end back and go through the crimp. Everybody follow me so far? So you just have a loop and you go back through the crimp and you crimp it down, it will pull and it'll come out and it will fail every time, okay? However, if you go in the eye of a hook, come back out, go back in the eye of the hook and back through the loop and essentially create a loop, so to speak, and then go into the crimp, it will not fail any of the time. But it takes a little finesse, as I mentioned, and you'll see when you come up here and look at this, how each one of these little crimps has a little, you kind of see what I mean? Okay, just be my witness and tell everybody it's there. It's there, okay. So you'll see, you know, how important that is. And again, like I said, it takes time to do that and a little bit of finesse, but you better do it or you will lose every fish that you hook. And you'll be like, Mike's idea was stupid, okay? Same, like I said, same outfit. You don't need a super heavy rod, okay, by any means, because you are primarily fishing a relatively light drag, okay? And keep that in mind. These fish, it's very easy to pull that hook out of that fish's mouth. So if you apply too much drag, too much heat, especially on the first run, you will pull a hook on a lot of fish, on a lot of big kingfish. So when you're kite fishing or slow trolling, fish a little bit of a lighter drag. Once that fish eats the bait, does its initial run, after the first 200-yard run or 100-yard run, you know what that fish is doing? He's breathing heavy, just like you would be if you just went outside and ran 100 yards. Okay, so fish is doing exactly the same thing. So once he's tired out a little bit, now you can apply a little bit more pressure. Some of these tournament king mackerel fishermen, you know, there's two trains of thought. Fish a really light drag the entire time. A light drag and a rod with a soft tip, okay, which acts as a shock absorber. So if the fish shakes its head or goes on a run, the soft tip on the rod absorbs all of that pressure rather than a hook pulling. Okay, so a lot of these tournament guys like those softer rods, and they fish that softer drag. There's another train of thought, sock 'em or pop 'em. Okay, the longer that fish is in the water, the more chances he has of getting away. Tighten up the drag, not too tight, obviously, because you're only fishing 20-pound line. You don't need more than 20-pound line. But tighten up the drag and get that fish to the boat and get him into the boat. Another thing that's important is a very long gaff. Most big kingfish are lost when? At the boat, okay? These tournament guys will have gaffs that are 15 feet long. 15 feet long. They'll stand up there, that gaff will be way over there. And they'll be like, got him, okay? Because as soon as that fish sees the boat, he's gonna take off again. And now you don't have a lot of give because there's not a lot of room between the fish and the rod tip. So you don't have a lot of give, and in turn, something could potentially go wrong, including pulling a hook. So keep that in mind, that a long gaff is really important when it comes to targeting big king mackerel. When you hook a big fish, you know, especially when you're slow trolling, the one thing I like about slow trolling, and really even kite fishing, of course, you hook a fish, there's likely other fish in the area, right? Because that fish is there for a reason, and you're still fishing. You still have other baits. So it's the same even when you're slow trolling. If you hook a big fish on your downrigger, or on any of the other baits, and you stop the boat and you put it into neutral to fight that fish, you're still fishing. Those baits are still swimming. But if you're slow trolling, and keep in mind the current is pushing me, it's behind me. The current is pushing me toward you guys right here. And if I put the boat in neutral, okay, what's going to happen? I'm going to continue to drift forward, and I'm going to continue to drag my baits. If I turn around, okay, and the current's going this way, same current's going in the same direction, but now I'm slow trolling into the current, and I put my boat in neutral, what's going to happen? I'm going to drift back on top of all of my baits, right? And all my baits are going to go under the boat, and they're going to be over there, and it's going to be one big fat mess. So pay attention to what's going on around you. Situational awareness is key for catching big fish in any scenario, in any venue, no matter what you're targeting. Pay close attention to what's going on around you. Which way are you drifting? So on and so forth. When you are slow trolling, keep in mind, for the most part, bait fish swim with or against the current. With, right? Because they save energy. It's kind of like birds flying. Think about a bird flying. Does he fly into the wind or with the wind? Usually with the wind, because they're saving energy. So it looks much more natural when you are slow trolling with the current, in the direction of the current. I remember one tournament in particular, we didn't win, but we got 6th place out of 130 boats, which I was pretty happy about. And we were fishing one small stretch in between Boca and Hillsborough Inlet. Right out front, there was about a half a mile stretch where we were catching quality fish. But we could only get them to bite going with the current. So we can only slow troll for about a half a mile, reel everything up, run back down, do the same line. Hook another one, reel everything up, run back down, because there was no sense of trolling into the current. We just weren't getting any bites. I'm not saying you will never catch a fish like that. Of course you will. Okay, spend enough time doing it, you will, because you can't always go in one direction. But again, pay attention. Okay, pay attention to what's going on. When you're kite fishing, even more important that you're paying attention, because if this time of the year we predominantly get southeast breezes. When you get a strong southeast breeze, if I stop right here, I'm going this way. The wind is coming from that direction, from the southeast, and my boat is drifting that way. If I stop the boat in 90 feet of water, by the time I get my kites up and my bait set, I'm in 70 feet of water or 60 feet of water. Okay, that's not where I want to be. I want to cross that whole pattern. So obviously I want to set up in 250 feet of water and be able to drift across that pattern. But some days the current's stronger than the wind. Some days, every day is different. So it's always a good idea to stop the boat, get everything ready, don't put any baits in the water for a couple of minutes, pay attention to, which way you're drifting, so you can then reposition the boat so you maximize as much time as possible over those key areas, okay? Kingfish you can catch anywhere. These big king mackerel, as far as we're concerned here, fishing out of Hillsborough and Boca Inlet for the most part, right? Most of us fish out of Hillsborough and Boca Inlet, but we can catch them from Fort Lauderdale all the way on up to Jupiter. Anybody ever go up to Jupiter to go king mackerel fishing? Oh my God. You better be prepared to change your life, okay? Because you go up to Jupiter on a busy Saturday morning to go king mackerel fishing. First of all, expect to encounter 972 other boats, combination of guys that are fishing, diving, commercial fishing. It's absolutely insane, because up there off Jupiter, they have these ledges that run parallel to the coast, and everybody stacks up on those ledges because there's a ton of bait there and there's a ton of kingfish there. Most of the, or not most, but a lot of the tournaments that are won down here are from the guys that are running right to Jupiter. First thing in the morning, 50 miles, we're going. No ifs, ands, or buts, we're not stopping until we get there, okay? And they catch a lot of fish up there. But it's absolutely a madhouse. These boats are on top of each other. Your baits are literally inside that guy's boat, and his baits are in your boat, but everybody's catching big kings. It's crazy. However, the current up there rips 3 to 5 knots at a minimum. So you stop the boat right here, and literally in 1 hour, you're 5 miles away. Okay, you're just flying with the current. It's crazy up there. But the point I'm making is you can really catch these big kingfish anywhere from Fort Lauderdale all the way up to Jupiter, and even further, obviously further south and further north. But it's a big, wide area. So there's a lot of ground that we can cover, a lot of productive territory where we can catch these fish. Everybody's so not used to, but we all want to be able to go out the inlet, stop, and fish right here. Okay, everybody wants to do that because it's easiest, and you save fuel and you save time. And one thing's for sure, you can't catch fish if you don't have baits in the water. So the more time that you're traveling, the less time that you're fishing. However, if you're serious about catching these big fish, you better be prepared to burn some fuel, get away from these crazy crowds here on the weekends, okay? Especially midday. It's one thing first thing in the morning, but as the day progresses and you get all of this boat traffic, it's very rare that you're going to hear of somebody catching smoker king mackerel, 30 to 50 pounds, at 1 in the afternoon. Okay, very, very rare. There's just too much going on. So get out of here, or get out of this region, I should say. So moving right along from king mackerel, as time's going on here, let's transition to blackfin tuna. Anybody ever catch big blackfin tuna? Well, heck, you're all at the right place. Okay. A lot of similarities, but a lot of differences, okay? Big blackfin tuna are absolutely prized as far as I'm concerned. And when I say big, you can go out here any day of the year. There's a whole series of wrecks outside the inlet. You can jig for tunas, catch these footballs until your arms fall off. You can troll little feathers behind the boat, okay, right in anywhere from 100 to 300 feet and catch little footballs, these small little blackfins that range anywhere from 2 pounds to 5 pounds, 6 pounds, okay? A lot of fun to catch, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the fish that are 20, 25, 30 pounds, 35 pounds. Florida state record blackfin tuna. Anybody know? 45. Damn, man, you know everything. Right? For somebody who doesn't catch, you know a lot. No, I'm just saying. Right. Yes, 45 pounds. And there's been even larger fish that have been caught that just officially haven't been, weighed in as an official record. So these fish get big, and they're super, super strong. They're absolutely great fighters. They're great to eat, and it's a glamorous fish. It's like, whoa, look, I caught these big blackfins. When I came down to Florida over 20 years ago, I was focused on catching these tunas, these big blackfins. I was like, man, I was a tuna fisherman up north. I caught a ton of bluefin tunas, yellowfin tunas, longfin tuna, big eye tuna. And I came down here, and first of all, we don't have those bigger tuna here, for the most part. The biggest tuna that we have, of course, locally are these blackfins, other than the occasional yellowfin or big eye caught out on the sword grounds, but certainly none that you can target locally. So it was these big blackfins, and I'm like, man, I was so into it. I couldn't catch them if my life depended on it. I'm watching all these other guys catch, coming back to the dock and catching these big blackfins, and I just couldn't get dialed in. I'm like, what in the world do you have to do to catch these 30-pound blackfin tuna? Because clearly what I'm doing isn't working. I'm trolling these lures, and I'm doing this and doing that, and none of it was working. I caught plenty of blackfins, but they were all small. They were all these footballs that are a dime a dozen. Okay? And then one day I said, you know what? I'm going to kind of regroup, and I'm going to start from ground zero and really try and figure out what's up with these things, because I want to catch them. I want to catch these big blackfins. The smaller fish, the footballs, are here year-round. The bigger fish, these 20 to 30, or I should say 25 to 35-pound studs, these bigger blackfin tunas, are really only here April, May, and June is peak season. I don't even want to say April. May, June, July. Okay? These 3 months, May, June, July, is when you're going to catch these big blackfins. Not to say that on any day of the year you may not hook a big tuna, because you will. Okay? You absolutely can. Now, we've caught them in January, we've caught them in September, but for the most part, there are more of them here now than at any other time of the year. So if you want to catch a big blackfin tuna, now is when you want to go. June is, I'm telling you, the best month of the year to catch these big blackfins. But you have to be committed. You got to be focused. Not to say that you won't catch a big tuna on a wire line stinger rig, because you will. Anybody who says, oh, you can never catch a big tuna on wire. Yeah, yes you can. You will. Okay, you fish wire long enough with a live goggle eye off a kite, you're going to catch tuna also. But if you're really committed on catching them, you've got to switch up your train of thought, you have to switch up your tactics, and you have to switch up your tackle a little bit. For starters, get rid of all of the wire. Now that's hard to do, because if you lose all of your wire and fish straight fluorocarbon, what's going to happen? Man, you're going to get cut. And let me tell you something. The kingfish bite is never better than when you cut off all your wire. I'm telling you that right now. Okay? You could be fishing wire with 12 baits and not get a bite and say, you know what, let's switch it up and go tuna fishing. Holy moly. Somebody rang the dinner bell for king mackerel because it's one after the other. Okay? Trust me when I tell you. So, but you have to be willing to make that sacrifice if you're serious about catching the big blackfins. If you're not and you just want action, keep the wire on. Maybe keep the wire on your kite baits, because that wire, for the most part, is out of the water and they don't really see it. So keep the wire on the kite baits, but on the flat lines, go straight fluorocarbon. Okay? However, if you're really serious and are saying, hey, I'm going tuna fishing. That's what I'm doing. I'm not going out here to go fishing to catch whatever I can. I'm going out here to go blackfin tuna fishing. Get rid of all the wire, okay, and fish straight fluoro. These fish, especially these bigger blackfin tuna, have incredible eyesight. Incredible eyesight. All tuna do. But blackfins here, these fish can pick off, you know, a jig. We catch big blackfins in the Gulf of Mexico at 2 in the morning in 300 feet of water off the bottom with a small little jig. It's pitch black, but they could see it. They could see it. They could feel it, okay? And I'm telling you, they have unbelievable eyesight. Anybody ever see the eye on a tuna? It's like a giant pupil, okay? So they're very, very sensitive to light, but they have incredible eyesight. If something doesn't look right, if they see that hook, if they see that wire, they're not eating it. They're not going to eat it. Yeah, every now and then one's going to make a dumb mistake and come up and eat it, certainly, but you're not going to put 4, 5, 6 fish in the boat, 12 in the boat. You're not going to do it, okay, unless you go straight fluoro. This is another big debate. We fish diamond presentation fluorocarbon. What strength? Okay, 50, too heavy. 40, too heavy. 30 pound fluorocarbon. Any lighter than that, and you risk losing that fish. We found 30 pound to be the ideal weight in fluorocarbon if you're looking to seriously target those tunas. Okay, no wire at all, 30 pound fluorocarbon, and a small hook. When I say small, on hey now, if we're flatlining, a number 3 circle hook, a 3-0, very, very small, okay? And I'm going to pass this around. I want you guys to all look at this small circle hook. It's super strong, but it's super small, and that's really important. And most guys will fish too big of a hook. As a matter of fact, that's the same hook that we'll fish for yellowfin tuna in the Bahamas with. That's how strong that hook is. On your kite outfit is a small little 5-0 little J hook. Now, how come we're not fishing a circle hook on our kite rod? Anybody know? Okay. In order for a circle hook to work effectively, the fish has to come up, eat the bait, swims away, you lock it up, and you just slowly reel. And you certainly can do the same on a kite bait, but in order for that circle hook to really be effective, you would have to bridle it to the bait. And if you bridle it, the entire hook is exposed. With a small J hook, it's easier to hide that hook in the top of the bait. or at least partially hide that hook in the top of the bait. Plus, keep in mind that tuna is going to come up. Is he going to nibble? No. Blackfin tuna don't nibble. They just absolutely inhale. They just crush that bait. So he's going to get this in his throat. It's a small hook, but it's strong. And as you can see, the same thing. There's no wire, 12 feet of 30-pound fluorocarbon. That's all that you need. You want to be as invisible and as stealthy as possible. We often will fish goggle eyes, but what's another great bait for the tunas? Pilchards. They love pilchards. Threadfin herring, sardines. Again, really anything that's alive, shimmering, really, really healthy. When we go out for the blackfin tunas, we know that what are the key times of the day when these fish are going to bite? Low light, because they absolutely hate light. I don't want to say they hate light, but their eyes are so sensitive to light. So low light conditions early in the morning and late in the afternoon are when you're going to catch the most blackfin tuna. We used to, I don't want to say, well, I'm going to say used to because I haven't done this in a while. You want to catch blackfin tuna, big ones, I'm going to tell you exactly how to do it. Get up tonight at 3 o'clock in the morning, okay? Load your boat with 3 of your best friends. Immediately go out to the Deerfield Pier in about 20 feet of water, anchor, put a chum bag in the water, fish a bunch of these sabikis, and load your bait well with 200 to 300 pilchards, okay? Oh, I'm not done. At 5 a.m., I want you to stop fishing for bait, pick up your anchor, and run 20 miles north to 130 feet of water between Boynton Beach and Delray. And I want you to anchor in 130 feet of water. And by now, it's approximately 5:45. And it's just slowly, you're just starting to see a little hint of light over the horizon. I want you to take 3 or 4 live baits, put them out behind the boat, no weight at all. They're going to flow back behind the boat with the current. Then open up your bait well and slowly start throwing live baits in the water. A couple at a time, not a lot, not a whole net full. By now it's 6 o'clock in the morning, okay? And the sun is slowly starting to come up over the horizon. And slowly start live chumming, steadily. At 6:15, you'll have your first bite. You'll have a steady bite from 6:15 to 7 o'clock, 7:15 maybe. If you're lucky, you'll put 3, 4, 5 big blackfins in the boat, and at 7:30, pick up your anchor and go home. You're done. Okay? You think I'm kidding you. That's your entire fishing trip right there. Because come 7:30, 8 o'clock, those fish are gone. They're gone. Okay? They're off the edge. When you do see those fish, and they're busting behind the boat and you hook up, now you don't throw 2 or 3 baits. How many you throw? You just throw them as fast as you can because tunas are on the move. They're schooling fish. They'll come up, they'll chase all of those live baits. But if there's not something to keep them there, they're gone. They'll keep going on their hunt for food. So once they're in that slick, you need to feed them. They will keep eating and eating and eating. You'll cut open a blackfin tuna that was in your slick. It's not uncommon for him to have 20 baits in him. He'll just keep eating and eating. Now, you certainly can do the same thing with chunks instead of live bait. But is it just as effective? No. No. Because, look, our bartender's here. I saw that. It's nowhere near as effective because these blackfin tuna have such incredible eyesight. They can pick up those shimmering baits at a great distance, those wounded shimmering baits, and they can feel that vibration. If all you're doing is chunking, yeah, it's effective, but nowhere near as effective as the live bait. When we're tournament fishing for king mackerel and blackfin tuna, you're not allowed to live chum, but you're allowed to chunk. So that's when you're going to cut up a lot of sardines or whatever you can get your hands on and chunk. And not too heavy, because if you chunk too heavy, what's going to happen? Sharks. Sharks. There's so many sharks out here. If you chunk too heavy, you're going to have sharks in your slick. And if the sharks are in your slick, the tuna are nowhere to be found. Okay? And if you do hook a tuna, gone. Okay? Shark's going to eat them up. So you want to chunk, you know, but not too heavy. A good rule of thumb, 3 or 4 pieces. Let them drift out away from the boat until you can't see them anymore. Another 3 or 4 pieces. So slow and steady, but don't overdo it. While you're doing that, the guy that is chunking should absolutely have a spinning rod in his hand with a little 3/0 circle hook, the same one that I'm passing around, okay? 30-pound fluorocarbon. The hook is buried in a chunk, and he's feeding out that chunk at the same speed that the chunks are moving away from the boat, right? He'll catch tuna as well. And when you're tournament fishing, one fish, it's always about that one fish. Okay, the guys who win are usually one fish away from the guy in 10th place. Okay, in other words, 20 to 30 pounds. So you catch one more, and you know, it's always about that one more fish. So maximize your time. And the guy who's chunking, like I said, should be feeding out a bait. In this particular case, this reel's loaded with 500 yards of 30-pound braid, but there's 100 feet of 30-pound diamond presentation fluorocarbon on top of the braid for stealth. Again, stealthy, that's the key. If you're not tournament fishing, live chumming, as I mentioned to you, is an absolutely awesome tactic for getting blackfin tunas to come to you. What do we look for when we're fishing for the blackfin tuna? If you don't want to get up at 3 in the morning, you have another option. What's that other option? That's right, the evening bite. The evening bite is absolutely awesome. Okay, just as good as that dawn bite. And you don't have to lose any sleep. You can work all day. Okay, as long as you have a whole bunch of baits, that's going to be the problem, is getting all of that live bait. Now, if you don't catch it, you do have another option, buying it. Okay, and you can buy pilchards if you know who to buy them from. If you're lucky, $1 each. If you're unlucky, $2 to $3 each. And you're going to need, you know, 3 to 500. Just keep that in mind. So obviously, investing the time to catch your live bait is worth it. And there's a lot of pilchards in Boca Inlet right now, by the way. Nevertheless, you can leave at, we'll say right now, really, it's 8:15. Man, I wish I had baits in order right this second. So you can literally leave at 6 o'clock, 6 in the evening. Get set up on the edge, okay, clean blue water, because unlike the kingfish that like the green water, the blackfin tunas don't. They don't. They like the blue, clean, you know, almost a cobalt purple water. That's really what those tunas love. Doesn't mean you won't catch them in the green water, because if there's bait and if the conditions are right, it's not uncommon to catch them in that green water. But if I had to decide, when I see that green water, I'm like, I'm not tuna fishing here. Okay, I want to find that nice, clean water. You can kite fish for them, obviously. If you're not capable or don't have the equipment to kite fish, don't worry about it. You can do exactly what I just said to you before. You can anchor up right on the edge in 130 to 150 feet of water, and you can live chum and just fish flat lines, okay, with no weight at all, and just feed them out behind the boat. You can drift. The only problem when you drift when you're live chumming, what happens? I'm live chumming, I'm drifting, maybe I've got that southeast breeze, I start my drift in 250, I'm live chumming, I get to 100 feet, 90 feet, I want to go up for another drift, all of those baits are now gone, okay? Because you know what happens? A lot of people think when you're live chumming and you throw all those live baits in the water, that they all go that way. You know where they are? They're sitting right under your boat, baby. One big ball, okay? Yeah, some are going to go there and some are going to go there, but they're all right under the boat, hiding. And as the boat drifts, they're drifting with the boat because they're shit scared. Okay, they really are. They're not going out there in the open. They know what's out there in the open. Death, okay? Your boat is structure. Your boat's safety. Your boat is like a haven, okay? So they're going to stay right under the boat. They really are. And then when you start to, when you start those motors to go up for another drift, they're not following you, okay? You're leaving them right there. So oftentimes it's a good idea to anchor when you're live chumming. Just make sure you're in the right spot. And that's the key. It's making that decision, because once you commit, once you say, hey, you know what? I'm going to anchor up here off of Boca. Great place this time of the year to blackfin tuna fish is right outside Boca, just a little bit north of Boca. Water looks good. You get out there 6 o'clock. You're anchored up by 7. You're chumming, okay? You don't get a bite by 7:30. You're like, oh, should I move? Should I move? But forget it. You're already committed. So make that decision as to where you're going to fish and choose wisely. That's why we like to go a little earlier to scout a little bit. Let's look around. What do we see? Is that water the right color? Is there any weeds around? Are there birds around? Do we read anything? It's always a good idea to go out a little bit earlier and scout, because like I said, once you make that commitment, you're there. And you're only fishing till it gets dark. But keep this in mind. Tuna will bite all night long. Okay, you catch them at night. Tuna eat at night. They don't go to sleep. They eat, okay, even in the pitch black. Nobody catches them out here at night. You want to know why? Because nobody's fishing for them at night. Okay, everybody's, on the edge fishing for yellowtail snapper. Nobody's out there tuna fishing. If you were, or if there were guys out there, they would catch them. Also remember, these big blackfins, predominantly 100 to 250 foot. Again, very similar to the kingfish. The kingfish are a little shallower. It's rare that you're going to catch a big king in 200 plus feet of water. They're going to be shallower than that. The blackfin tunas, like I said, up to 250. But usually 100 to 200 is really that ideal depth, is 100 to 200 feet. But they will swim much, much deeper. We've caught blackfin tuna on deep drop rigs in 800 feet of water, okay? I'm like, what the hell? Totally surprised. Made me realize that during the day, these fish will swim really, really deep, okay? 400, 500 feet, really deep. So in the middle of the day, when these big blackfins tend to disappear, because again, you generally catch them low light, early in the morning or late in the evening. So where are they during the day? They didn't just shut down. They went down deep to feed on squid. Exactly. Okay. So what do we do then? Middle of the day, we go slow pitch jigging. Okay. And this is super effective in the middle of the day to catch blackfin tunas in up to 500 feet of water. This is the only way to do this effectively. You cannot take a live goggle eye and drop him to the bottom in 500 feet. Guess what's going to happen? He's going to die, okay? And the tunas aren't going to eat him. So we jig, okay? We jig during the day in deep water, no less than 350 and up to really 550. And you'll catch a lot of tuna. They will not all be big, okay? 1 out of 10 will be, well, probably 1 out of 20 will be one of these big studs. But I'd rather catch 20 tuna and one of them be big than catch nothing. How about you guys? Yeah. Right? So the only way to do that, as I mentioned, effectively is the slow pitch jig. And I believe we have a seminar coming up on that. But again, it's really one of the most effective techniques for catching these fish in areas where we never even knew they were there. We never, we always wondered, where the heck do these things go in the middle of the day? Feel that. Can you fish with that all day long?
Oh, yeah, I could.
Well, not this one, but just saying, it's nice and light and comfortable, right?
Yeah, and you could go down how deep?
You could easily go to 800 feet with that.
That's the light, that's like the light.
That's it,
what I look for.
that's it. Light tackle, but super strong and super sensitive. But that's a different seminar. So again, during the day, don't be afraid to look for these fish out in the deep on the bottom, okay? Early mornings, if you're tournament fishing, like I said earlier, you have to make that you have to make that decision, A lot of the tournaments here are the same. they're KDW tournaments, you know, Kingfish, Dolphin, Wahoo, or they're meat fish tournaments, you know, so to speak, where blackfin tuna, and you're allowed to weigh how many fish? 10. So you've got to decide, what am I most likely, what do I need first? You know, think about the strategy. The easiest fish to catch are what? Kingfish. Kingfish. So right out of the gate, most of the guys will target the king mackerel, and they'll keep all of the wire on. However, we also realize that your best chances of catching the blackfin tuna are first thing in the morning, right? Okay, during that low light, during those early, you know, those first few hours. So you've got a decision to make as to, you know, which do you want to target. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of guys will keep the wire on the kite baits and will fish the fluorocarbon on the flat lines. And if a pattern develops and you're starting to see more tuna and less kings, switch over more. If you're starting to see more kings and you're getting cut off and no tunas, put the wire back on. Okay, that's up to you to decide. If you're just fun fishing, same thing. You have to make that decision. Am I targeting the kingfish, or do I specifically want to go tuna fishing and catch these big tunas? Forget the jigging on a wreck, okay, in 200 feet of water, because you'll catch a lot of blackfins, but they're all going to be the footballs. If you're really serious about those big fish, you got to live chum. Okay, you really got to go out there, live chum, because these fish they're going to come up on the edge and they're going to find you. Okay, it's not like the kingfish where you're going to find them. They're going to find you. And when they come around the boat, you better keep them there, okay, with a lot of baits, because they're going to blow right by you. You may get one shot. You know, if you're just throwing a couple of baits, you may get one blast. But if you keep chumming, you'll keep them there and you'll be able to catch multiple fish. So it's a commitment. It really is. In either scenario, it's a commitment. You know, it's not about, I just want to go fishing and catch whatever I can. You've got to be focused. You've got to be detail-oriented. You've got to pay attention to every little detail, because it really is going to make a difference. Fortunately, you know, as I mentioned, these fish are right here, right now. Okay, they're up and down our coast right now, both the big blackfins and the big king mackerel. But there's a lot of smaller ones mixed in as well. Okay, so to specifically target those big ones, change your mindset. You may have to lose some sleep to catch some bait yourself, or you may have to dig deep in your pockets, okay, to buy bait. Either way, to really maximize your odds, like I said, on the big blackfins, you're going to need a live bait. The big blackfins, like the smoker kings, is not a trolling game. Okay, yeah, you'll see the charter boats every now and then. They'll have a big tuna. Same thing I said earlier. They're out there twice a day, every day. Eventually, you're going to run across a big one. But on a regular basis, for guys like you and I that are not out there twice a day on 2 trips every single day, we've got to increase our odds. And trolling is not the way to catch the big blackfin tuna here in our particular area. It's not. Okay? It's all about the live bait. It really is. Could you chunk with sardines? As I mentioned, yes, but it's not going to be anywhere near as effective. Finally, remember to eliminate, I say this in all of our seminars as well, eliminate angler failure and tackle failure. Anybody ever lose a fish because you tied a bad knot? One guy said yeah. Anybody ever lose a fish because you tied a bad knot? Yes. Okay, or your drag was set wrong, or you swung the gaff at the wrong time, or one of a million different things, or your line was frayed and you said, oh, it's okay. It's all right, I'll change it on the next fish, right? Okay, if you eliminate all of those issues, you're going to be a more successful angler. And when one fish could make a big difference, it's important that you eliminate all of that, because we can't control the weather and we can't control the fish, but we can control this, and we can control what we do, and that's what you need to do. And that's how you catch the big smoker kings and the big blackfins. Thank you for coming.